You still fixing printers at that dusty school office?" That was the first thing my brother said to me after hugging everyone else at Thanksgiving dinner, loud enough for the entire dining room to hear. And he laughed like he'd just delivered the punchline of the year. We were back at my mom's house in Austin. Same house we'd grown up in. Same long table covered in casseroles, gravy boats, and family pride so thick you could taste it. But in this house, respect had a price tag, and I apparently couldn't afford it. I'm Erin. I'm 34. I work as an office coordinator at a public high school in East Austin. It's not glamorous. I refill toner cartridges, make sure the laptops are charged for testing days, and yes, sometimes I do fix the printer. But I also manage the school's budget, organize staff hiring, and keep 600 kids from falling through bureaucratic cracks every single day. Not that anyone at that table cared. Colin, my older brother, was the golden boy. Founder of a flashy AI startup, always in tech conferences and news features. He wore a custom-fitted blazer that probably cost more than my monthly rent and brought a date named Aria, who spent the first 10 minutes complimenting the rustic charm of our mom's house like it was a museum exhibit. "So," he continued, raising his wine glass, "still living in that shoebox apartment over by the freeway?" My cousin chuckled into his cranberry sauce. Aria tilted her head. "You don't own?" "I like where I live," I said calmly, even though my throat was burning. "It's rent-controlled, close to work." That opened the floodgates. "Rent-controlled?" My aunt laughed. "I didn't even know they still did that. Isn't that for, students or low income?" Mom gave me a look that was supposed to be neutral but stung worse than anything else. Quiet embarrassment. "I've got a guy who could help you buy," Colin offered generously. "Even with, your situation." "What situation? The one where I paid off my student loans myself? The one where I chose a job with purpose over a paycheck padded by venture capital?" I bit my tongue. I didn't flinch. Not yet. Because here's the thing none of them knew. 3 years ago, Colin came to me panicked about seed funding. His prototype wasn't working, and the big-name VCs weren't biting. He needed money. Fast. But he couldn't get it in his name without triggering debt covenants. So I offered to help. Not as Erin Vale, little sister, but as a silent investor through a trust I had been quietly building since my mid-20s. Quasar Trust. He took the money. Never asked where it came from. Never asked who owned the other 32%. And 2 months ago, when his burn rate spiraled out of control and the Series B round stalled, I bought out the remaining shares from the other founders. Through a shell entity he never looked twice at. He didn't know yet, but I now owned 72% of the company he bragged about at every dinner table. And I was done being quiet. I looked around the table as laughter moved on to someone else's salary, someone else's condo in Miami. My mom was topping off Colin's wine. Aria was filming the food for Instagram. I excused myself and walked to the kitchen. That's when I heard Colin behind me, still chuckling. "If you ever want to do something real with your life," he said, "we're hiring a receptionist. Aria thinks you'd be cute at the front desk." I turned, slow and steady, and smiled. "Funny," I said. I was just about to mention a career move of my own. He raised an eyebrow. "Yeah? What, gonna run the teacher's lounge?" I dried my hands on a dish towel, met his eyes, and said, "No. I'm replacing the CEO of Synapse AI next Thursday. He's under review for misappropriation of investor funds. The board vote's already scheduled." The blood drained from his face. "Synapse is my company." I tilted my head. "No, Colin, ours. And I now own the majority." Colin didn't speak for a full 5 seconds. Then his laugh cracked through the kitchen like a wine glass hitting tile. "You?" he said, voice sharp. "That's hilarious. Seriously, Erin, what kind of delusional—" "It's not a joke," I cut in. He blinked, waiting for the punchline that never came. I stepped closer, calm and steady, even as my heart punched against my ribs. "Through Quasar Trust, I've been quietly acquiring equity in Synapse over the last 3 years. Your last investor round? The one that bailed you out?" "That was me." His jaw clenched. No, that round came from Haven Ridge Group. Yes, I nodded. And I own 100% of Haven Ridge Holdings. It was a clean funnel. Legal, silent, and very real. I watched the gears turn in his head, saw the exact moment he remembered the term sheets he'd barely skimmed, the funding emails he forwarded without reading, assuming they were just more rich guys in Patagonia vests lining up to kiss his ring. You're bluffing, he hissed. There's no way. I have board authority, Colin. You signed it. You never even read the dilution clause in your own founder agreement. He looked like he might be sick. In the living room, someone turned up the volume on a football game. Dishes clattered. Arya laughed at something Aunt Kara said. None of them knew the war unfolding just 15 feet away. I trusted you, he said low. I told you I was trying to build something. And I believed you, I said, softer now. Back then, when it was about real innovation, when you talked about democratizing access to AI for public education, remember that? He looked away. But somewhere along the way, I continued, it stopped being about helping people and became about clout. You started paying influencers to wear branded hoodies. You dropped 50 grand on an AI for luxury brands retreat in Maui. You pulled from payroll to lease that Tesla plaid. He looked like he wanted to argue, but he couldn't. He knew it was true. I stepped back, giving him space. This isn't revenge, Colin, I said. It's stewardship. You've burned through goodwill, capital, and trust. I'm stepping in before you burn down the entire company. He stared at me like he didn't recognize the woman in front of him. And maybe he didn't. Because he hadn't noticed the months I came home too tired to cook, too wired to sleep. He hadn't seen me build Quasar Trust from spare paychecks and weekend consulting jobs. He hadn't seen the years I sat in the back row of pitch nights, taking notes while others got applause. He'd only seen me through the lens of who I used to be. The little sister tagging along, the one who stayed small. Now I was his majority shareholder. Don't do this, he said finally. Not at Thanksgiving, not like this. I sighed. You're right. This isn't the time. He exhaled, almost relieved, until I added, but you have until Monday to submit your resignation. I've already spoken to legal. If you cooperate, I'll keep it private. If you don't, the board will vote you out and the financials will go public. You'd destroy your own family for this? I looked at him, really looked at him. Colin, you destroyed it the moment you valued your image more than your integrity. I turned to leave the kitchen, my hands still shaking. But just as I reached the doorway, Arya was standing there. And from the stunned look on her face, she'd heard everything. Wait, you're the investor? She said, eyes wide. You're the one who saved Synapse? I nodded, lips tight. She looked back toward the kitchen, then to me. Colin told me Synapse was self-funded, that his tech got him all the capital. I gave a half smile. Well, he's good at selling stories. Her face darkened. I just left my UX job to join him as head of brand strategy. I put my whole name behind him. She swallowed, voice shaking. Please tell me there's still a company left to save. I looked at her. This woman who, until an hour ago, laughed when my job was mocked and my apartment dismissed. Now she was one of the many left holding the fallout. And she had no idea what was coming Monday morning. Monday came like a slow, sharp blade. I walked into the Synapse AI headquarters at 8:04 a.m., 2 minutes earlier than Colin ever managed to show up in 5 years. My heels echoed across the marble lobby floor as I passed the receptionist, who greeted me politely, still unaware. By 8:30, the boardroom was full. Legal counsel, investors, department heads. Even Arya, in a tailored blazer, sitting stiffly at the end of the table. Her eyes avoided Colin's. And Colin? He strutted in at 8:37, sunglasses on, coffee in hand, like he owned the place. Morning all, he said with that smirk that used to charm people. Sorry, traffic. No one laughed. Not today. I stood up and turned to face the room. For those who don't know me, I'm Erin Vale, I said calmly. Effective immediately, I'll be assuming executive control of Synapse AI as acting CEO. Murmurs rippled. Some jaws actually dropped. Colin's eyes darted from face to face. This is insane, he scoffed. She's not qualified to run a tech company. She's a secretary at a... I held up a file and tapped it on the table. This is the signed shareholder agreement. I now hold 72% voting rights. He lunged forward, grabbing the paper. When he saw the signatures, his included, his skin drained to a dull gray. I flipped open another folder. These are internal audits from the last 2 quarters. They show over $600,000 in questionable expenses, including private jet charters, crypto investments, and personal research trips to Ibiza. Colin tried to talk over me. Those were approved. Those were legitimate founder perks. They were not, I interrupted. None of them were cleared by the board. And the kicker? You submitted forged invoices under a shell contractor registered to your college roommate's dog walking app. The room went silent. Someone choked on their coffee. Arya sat rigid, lips pressed in a straight line. I didn't look at her. Not yet. HR has been notified. Your keycard has already been deactivated. I continued, my voice steady. You'll be escorted out after this meeting. Colin laughed, dry, desperate. You can't be serious. You're doing this to me? Me, your brother? I turned to face him fully. No, Colin. You did this to yourself. I just stopped pretending not to notice. He slammed a fist on the table. I built this from scratch. You built a concept, I said evenly. I built a company. The room was stone cold, and then Arya stood up. I have a statement, she said, her voice tight. As of this morning, I'm resigning from my role as head of brand strategy. Colin turned to her, stunned. What? She took a breath. You didn't just lie to investors, Colin. You lied to me. About everything. About the funding, about the product, even about your ex. You told me Erin was your bitter sister who never amounted to anything. All eyes snapped back to me. She continued, voice shaking now. Turns out she's the only one who did. I almost felt bad for him. Almost. But then came the twist. Before Colin could storm out, the door opened. A tall woman in a navy suit walked in, flanked by 2 men in plain clothes. Mr. Vale? She asked. Who are you? He demanded. Agent Langley, Financial Crimes Division, Colin froze. We've been investigating irregular transfers tied to Synapse's funding pool. A warrant has been issued for questioning. You'll need to come with us. No, wait, this is ridiculous, he stammered, looking at me like I'd orchestrated the whole thing. I didn't say a word, because I hadn't called them. I didn't need to. Turns out, one of the silent investors Colin had scammed wasn't so silent after all. As they escorted him out, slumped, gray-faced, humiliated, I sat back down, hands calm in my lap. I finally looked at Arya. You still think I'd be cute at the front desk? Her laugh was quiet. Honestly, I think you're terrifying. Good. I'd spent too long being underestimated. After the boardroom chaos, things moved fast. HR processed Colin's termination. Legal froze his company access. The press picked up the story by noon. Founder ousted amid internal power shift. But that wasn't the satisfying part. No, the real win came in silence. In small moments, like walking into the executive suite, his old office, and seeing his nameplate gone. Like watching employees who used to ignore me suddenly hold elevators and say, "Good morning, Erin," with quiet respect. But what people didn't realize was that this revenge, this wasn't sudden. It started the moment I stopped trying to be palatable. For years, I let Colin talk over me. At the dinner table, in meetings, in life. He was loud, confident, fast-talking. I was methodical, precise, quiet. And people mistake quiet for weakness until you own the damn building. The day after the takeover, I started scheduling one-on-one meetings with department heads. I wanted to hear directly from the people who actually built Synapse: engineers, researchers, support staff. Most had never spoken to the C-suite before. I listened. And what I heard made my blood boil. Colin had slashed the R&D budget to fund marketing parties. He'd ghosted education clients because school districts don't scale. He'd ignored accessibility concerns because niche features kill product velocity. And yet, these people, these brilliant, tired, underpaid people, were still showing up, still working weekends, still believing in the original vision. So I made a promise. This company will build tech that serves, not flexes. And then I got to work. First, I reinstated every paused education contract. Then I personally called every laid-off engineer and offered them their jobs back, with back pay. Finally, I announced that Synapse would be opening a nonprofit branch focused solely on public sector AI tools, with a board made up of teachers, social workers, and accessibility advocates. The reaction? Shock, gratitude, and from a few execs, fury. One in particular, Brad, the former VP of Ops, was livid. "You're gonna tank the company trying to play Mother Teresa," he sneered in a meeting. "No," I said calmly. "I'm going to save it. You just don't like that your free steak dinners are getting cut." He slammed his pen down and stormed out. That night, someone tried to revoke my admin access from the back end. Luckily, my new CTO, Lena, who Colin had once fired for not being a culture fit, flagged it instantly. "Want me to trace the IP?" she asked, already typing. "Please do," I said, "and log everything. We might need it later." By Friday, I thought the worst was over, until I walked into my office and found my mother sitting there, in my chair. She didn't even look up, just swirled her tea and said, "You've made quite the mess." I blinked. "You broke into my office to say that?" She finally looked at me, her expression unreadable. "Colin called me. He says you've humiliated him, ruined the company, turned our family name into a punchline." I laughed. He did that on his own. But then she stood, and what she said next nearly knocked the air out of my lungs. "You think you're so clever, Erin. But while you were busy playing boss, you missed something important." She pulled a manila envelope from her purse and slid it across the desk. "Read it." I opened it and felt the blood drain from my face. It was a purchase agreement. Dated last week, signed, stamped. It showed that Colin had sold 18% of his remaining shares to a private buyer, enough to trigger a board seat. And the buyer? My mother. My mother. "I told him not to sell to outsiders," she said coolly. "But when I saw what you were doing, I figured if I couldn't stop the storm, I'd better buy an umbrella." She smiled like this was a chess move, like she had just saved the family name. "You see, sweetheart, now I have a say." I stood there, paper trembling in my hands, heart pounding. Because in that moment, I realized I wasn't just fighting Colin anymore. For a week, I couldn't breathe without calculating. Every hallway glance, every board email, every new meeting request that came from my mother's assistant instead of directly from her. I cataloged it all. Because now that she had a seat at the table, she didn't need to raise her voice to wield power. She just had to sit still and watch me flinch. But I didn't flinch. I did the one thing she never expected. I invited her to the annual stakeholder summit and handed her the floor. She opened her speech with a warm smile, praised Colin's visionary spark, nodded politely at me, and then, right on cue, offered a proposal to balance the aggressive redirection of Synapse with more traditional oversight. Translation: roll back the changes I made, quiet the nonprofit wing, rebrand, recenter the family legacy. The room gave her polite applause. I stood and thanked her for her remarks. Then I clicked the remote. Behind me, the screen lit up with a slide titled, "The Cost of Legacy," and I showed them everything. A side-by-side comparison of Colin's last quarter and our first quarter post-restructure. Revenue up 18%, Churn down 32%. Customer satisfaction tripled. Then I showed a quote from a district superintendent in Arizona. Synapse AI is the first tech vendor that made us feel like more than a line item. The room shifted. Then came the real hit. I switched to the final slide. It was a scanned document, another shareholder agreement, one that voided my mother's board rights. You see, her purchase of Colin's shares violated a clause she hadn't read carefully, a clause I'd inserted 3 years ago, back when I helped structure the original bylaws. A clause that triggered automatic board review if more than 15% of founder equity was transferred to a direct relative, without approval. She didn't get approval. And the board? They voted the night before. Quietly. Legally. I turned to her, voice calm. Effective immediately, your board seat is revoked. Your shares will convert to non-voting status for the next 24 months pending internal ethics review. She stared at me like I'd slapped her. You tricked me. No, I said. I protected the company from becoming a vanity project. Again. For the first time, I saw it. The break in her poise. A slight tremble in her fingers as she gathered her papers. She walked out without another word. Colin? Still facing audit proceedings. Last I heard, he moved to Scottsdale and was trying to launch a podcast about startup burnout. No one's really listening. As for me, I didn't take the CEO title. I handed it to Lena, the brilliant woman Colin once fired, and moved into the head of ethics and development role. It's quieter, better fit. More importantly, I moved back into my old one-bedroom near the high school, still rent-controlled, still humble. But now, I get stopped on the sidewalk by students asking about tech careers. I get emails from teachers thanking Synapse for showing up when no one else did. We didn't just save a company. We built a new standard. And no, my family doesn't understand it. But then again, we don't need to share a name to share a standard. If I've learned anything from this, it's that control is never the end goal. Clarity is. You don't win by shouting louder. You win by standing steady while the noise burns itself out. If you've ever been dismissed, underestimated, or watched people twist your loyalty into leverage, drop your story in the comments. I'd love to hear how you reclaimed your space, your voice, or just your peace. And if you want to walk with me through more stories like this, real ones, messy ones, earned ones, go ahead and subscribe. I'll be right here, building quietly, until it's time to speak again.